Sweet Valley High, number 10, Wrong Kind of Girl. Is this Jessica Wakefield's bitchiest move ever? I think it might be. Let's find out. Hi everyone, I'm Rosie Blythe. I'm the author of the Princess Guide to Life book series, and on this channel we talk about all kinds of stuff from dogs to royalty to spirituality. But today we are continuing my little mini series on another book series that I love, Sweet Valley High. And we have possibly Courtney Cox on the cover here. We know that actors at the time in the 80s did pose for all kinds of stuff, modelling and book covers. And this does look quite a lot like Courtney Cox. So, and she had short hair because we all remember her, of course, in the Bruce Springsteen video. That was kind of her big break, I guess. So I think this is a plausible theory. Also, this is nothing to do with the story, but many of my books are secondhand and I love getting these little bits of history. This copy came from the Langleybury School Library and it looks like the last date stamp here is from 1996. I just think it's cool. So you know I like to dress the part. Pineapple Dance Studio dance kind of like cheerleading, and it's similar-ish colours, so that's as close as you're gonna get. So I just realised I'm kind of dressed like both of them because I'm wearing this pineapple dance top, but I'm also wearing underneath a purple vest, very much like Annie's, and that wasn't even planned, so it's just another example of how I have subconsciously been emulating all of these covers forever. So this book is all about the cheerleading squad, and Jessica Wakefield is the co-captain, of course. Now, the crux of the book is that they have a squad of 5 people and they are going to take on 2 more members and have a squad of 7. But I was like, 5 members is tiny. Like, it's barely worth doing. How are you even gonna make it look impressive? And I looked it up and apparently it's more normal to have 10 to 12 and Google says that 5 is the smallest you can have. The whole kind of premise is like, oh, it has to be so small and exclusive is silly anyway. So Jessica Wakefield is the co-captain and she loves the power of being like, you can be in my squad but you can't. She loves it. So we have Annie Whitman, who is a sophomore, so she's only 15, and Jessica is appalled to find that Annie has put her name down to be in the squad. She says, the nerve, the absolute colossal nerve. And everyone's like, what's the big deal? And she does not like Annie Whitman because Annie is easy, because she dates a lot of boys. And this is why Jessica doesn't like her, apparently. The fact that Jessica also dates a lot of boys is maybe the problem here. Jessica insists that Annie is never going to be in the squad because she would taint it with her very presence. Just to put the nail in the coffin, Annie has been seen with Rick Andover. The first book was all about Jessica's run-in with him and how he took her to a bar and was dreadful. So it's like the fact that he's going out with Annie is just like, ugh, what a horrible girl she must be. So Elizabeth kind of speaks to Annie like, didn't you have a big test that you needed to study for? Did you actually go out with Rick Andover? And yeah, it's true, she did. So Elizabeth agrees that she's going to help Annie study some more for her future tests in the hope that she can just like keep her off probation in school. So Elizabeth goes to Annie's apartment after school and then she just immediately feels really awkward because Annie starts telling her about like, oh yeah, it's me and my mum's boyfriend Johnny, who's awful. And Elizabeth kind of doesn't really know how to say like, I don't want to know all this stuff. It's just, I just want to tutor you and help you and stop my sister from being horrible to you. I don't really want to get embroiled in your life. But she does actually kind of have quite a nice friendship with Annie, and she is a listening ear for her because you know, this young girl does have quite a few problems. So Annie starts saying how her mum had her when she was a teenager, when she was 17. And this just blows Elizabeth's mind because she's obviously comes from quite a sheltered upbringing. So Elizabeth can't even fathom the idea of having a baby this age, which, you know, it is extremely young. And I think this is the only time teen pregnancy ever gets mentioned in Sweet Valley High, which is quite weird because, I don't know, when I was growing up it was quite a big thing. I don't know if it is anymore. I know the teen pregnancy rate has dropped quite a lot. And I don't know if that's because teenagers don't go out anymore. They're just all on Snapchat instead of actually going out and meeting people. Or if they're just more sensible and use contraception. I don't know what the answer is. but I don't think it's really seen as a big problem anymore. But I think in the 80s it would have been more of a social issue. So it's weird that Sweet Valley High never really addresses it, because I guess if they did, they would have to address the idea of 16-year-olds having sex, which we're not allowed to talk about. It's mentioned that Annie was a model when she was a bit younger, when she was sort of 13 or so. So she's actually already been in this very adult world, and I think she's taken on a lot of adult responsibilities. So she's got quite an old head on her shoulders. And Elizabeth just had no idea about this. She just kind of saw this young, pretty, frivolous girl dating a lot and not studying. So Elizabeth is sort of comparing her own very stable upbringing with Annie's, and feeling sort of vaguely guilty that she got such a perfect family. She was so proud of her tall, dark-haired, good-looking father. Even though he was one of the busiest lawyers in the area, he always had time to be with his family. I don't think that's true. I think if you were a busy lawyer, the hours that you would work would be pretty horrendous. And then even with her career, Alice Wakefield was always there when the girls needed her. I mean, she's like I think she's full-time, isn't she, interior designer? I think she was part-time in the Sweet Valley Twins when they're 12. But yeah, so even with a career, their mum still has time for them. So yeah, they do have busy parents, but yeah, I'm not believing that about a lawyer having a lot of time to spend with his family. Anyway, her mum comes home kind of drunk, and Annie is embarrassed about this and just kind of ushers Elizabeth out, and Liz is happy to go because it's all just a bit messy for her. So meanwhile, Jessica is also doing some coaching. She's working with her friend Cara to make sure that she knows all of the moves, so her tryout for the cheerleading squad will be perfect. And while they're there, Jessica's brother Steve comes home and he's moping around. Now, Cara has had this crush on Steve forever. Jessica really wants to set them up because Steve's current girlfriend is Trisha Martin, and she's got a drunk father. So two of the Wakefield siblings kind of have this sympathy for people from the wrong side of the tracks, and Jessica's just like, no, not on my watch. But yeah, so anyway, Trisha's father has just hit someone with his car. I think they're okay. But so he's been in jail, and they're all just kind of horrified, but feel sorry for Trisha because, you know, it's not her fault that her dad's like this. But Jessica just wishes he would drop her and go out with her friend Cara. It would be so much better. So then we come to the tryouts. So Jessica introduces Ricky Capaldo, their manager, in quite a funny way actually. She says he's the brains of the organisation, the heart and soul of the squad, and please don't rip his clothes off. And Ricky, who is like this kind of like quiet, softly spoken, kind of nerdy guy, comes out. I don't know why he's their manager, how that came about, but he is. When Annie does her audition or her tryout, whatever you want to call it, for cheerleading, and she does it perfectly and it's amazing. And so Ricky Capaldo says, great going, Miss Flashdance. Flashdance, of course, being an iconic 80s movie about dance and welding. So Jessica is not happy about Annie A, showing up, and B, being brilliant and being like by far the best auditionee. So on the very first page of the book we have a little rundown of the other girls in the cheerleading squad. So it's Robin Wilson, the current Miss Sweet Valley High. No mention of the fact that she used to be a fat girl and Jessica bullied her, but I guess they've just buried the hatchet. Helen Bradley, a stunning redhead. Jean West, a pixie brunette. And Maria Santelli, who could do backflips. Okay, so after the tryouts, Helen Bradley is there and her brother, Tim Bradley, has come to watch the auditions. So Jessica is incredibly annoyed because he's like, oh, maybe he's come to see me. No, he's come to take Annie out for a date afterwards. So yeah, that's just compounded the hatred and jealousy that Jessica feels for this poor 15-year-old girl. So no one else seems to have an issue with Annie. Everyone else just like applauds and is like, oh my god, you're so amazing to her, because she is. Jessica's the only one who even has an issue with her being easy. And Jessica would do well to remember that when she was dating Bruce Patman, he was putting around rumours about her being easy. And it was just rumours, it was just him being a guy and just saying stuff. But like, she should probably realise that it's not necessarily true just because guys are saying stuff. And Elizabeth kind of discovers when she talks to Annie that it's all just very innocent. Like, Annie's just going out with these guys and she's like, oh yeah, no, I'm not serious about it, we're just having fun. And they just like going out for a milkshake, going out bowling, whatever it is that teenagers were doing on dates in the 80s. And she's not sleeping with them, she's just dating them. And there's nothing wrong with going out on lots of dates. And Annie's just, she's almost too innocent for her own good, because Elizabeth's like, oh, should I put it in the gossip column that you went out with Tim Bradley? And she's like, no, it's just one date. And then she's like, oh, if you really want to know the hot news, I've got dates with 2 different guys. And Elizabeth's just like, why does she not care? Like, why would she be happy for that to go in the gossip column that she's going out with 2 different guys? So it is kind of weird that Annie doesn't realise that's not the done thing. That's certainly not what everyone else is doing, but I guess she's just living life like a guy. She's ahead of her time. And I feel like the reaction to this now would be like, you go girl, do whatever you want. But obviously in the 80s, or in this particular small town, it's a very different thing. So Elizabeth goes over to tutor her again, and Annie's like helping the elderly neighbours just to tell us what a nice person she is. So Elizabeth kind of gets stuck with her mum for a bit, and she starts kind of quizzing her like, oh, is she popular at school? And Elizabeth just doesn't really know what to say. Like, yeah, she is. Anyway, they're all going to forget their troubles with a night at the beach disco. Doesn't that sound fun? I would love to go to a beach disco. Jessica is there with Skip Harmon, who's a senior. And Jessica actually won a bet with Elizabeth, because Elizabeth was like, he never goes out with juniors. And Jessica was like, he'll go out with me. And she makes a bet, which obviously she wins against Elizabeth. Because she's very confident. Jessica is there wearing a black and red striped top and her shortest skirt, and we don't know how short that is. I'm assuming it's a mini, but who knows. And they're all having a great time, and then Annie shows up, and she is wearing a slinky outfit with a skirt that had a slit almost to the top of her thigh. And if that wasn't enough, she was accompanied by none other than Bruce Patman. And we all know Bruce. He's the handsome, arrogant captain of a Sweet Valley High tennis team, and he's very rich. We love and hate Bruce in equal measures. And of course, Bruce and Jessica have this history where they dated and she was madly in love with him until he cheated on her, so they're now sworn enemies. And Annie has just screwed up any teeny tiny chance that she might have had to kind of befriend Jessica. It's like, no, not happening. So Elizabeth is there worrying. Like, Todd puts up with so much. He's literally like, what is my favourite worrier worrying about this evening? Like, Elizabeth's so boring. She's like such a boring date. She's always like, oh, what's Jessica doing now? Like, live your life, Elizabeth. Just do your own thing. Stop worrying about your sister. And like every conversation that she has with Enid, with Todd, they've all got like a sort of reason to mistrust Jessica because she's screwed them all over at various points. So like Elizabeth can't really find like an unbiased person to talk to because everyone knows what Jessica is like except her. And Annie, actually. In this case, Annie's completely oblivious to how Jessica feels about her. She just thinks like Jessica's a perfectly nice person. She has no idea. Anyway, there's a dance off, and of course in the end the crowd is applauding equally for Jessica and Skip and Annie and Bruce, so it's a draw. And Annie's like, yeah, you and me, Jessica, and just has no idea that Jessica is seething so much. Jessica's plastered on smile didn't waver, but Elizabeth saw that look and knew it was carved out of purest ice. And Jessica can't even like come up with a proper reason for why she doesn't like Annie. She's just like, oh, she was disgustingly showy. And Elizabeth's like, this dance contest. Like, you both were equal. Like, what is the problem? And she says, Jess, is it just possible you're so angry because Annie did as well as you did? And Jessica's raging. She wasn't as good. It was just the novelty of seeing her dance for the first time. Everyone was surprised. So yeah, Jessica is just absolutely green with envy, and she just cannot stand having another attractive girl who can dance as well as she can, or better probably, and can do the cheerleading as well as she can, or better, and can date any boy she wants to, like she can. Like, she just cannot handle having a rival who's a year younger. Oh, Jess, wait till you're 30 and she's 29, then it's really going to annoy you. Anyway, Elizabeth does her usual, like, moping around, like, oh, I don't know what to do. And Mr. Collins, her favourite teacher, comes along and gives her advice. She's sort of lamenting the fact that she's kind of involved because she is tutoring Annie, and she doesn't really want to tell Jessica that because that is what is keeping Annie able to audition. If she failed at one of her subjects, she wouldn't be able to audition anyway. So Elizabeth starts talking to Miss Collins in, you know, what she thinks is probably quite subtle terms, like, oh, there's this one girl who wants something and another girl who doesn't want her to have it. He probably knows exactly what she's talking about. He knows Jessica. He knows the cheerleading squad thing is happening. So she's probably not as subtle as she thinks she is. And Jessica is drumming it into her squad that Annie is not their type, that she does not want her in the thing. But they stubbornly vote her in. So she has made the next cut. And Annie actually confides in Elizabeth that she's sort of thinking she needs to make some changes, and she wants to cut down on all the dating and just focus on being a better student and doing the cheerleading thing and just being the best person she can be. So it's already having a positive effect on her. So Jessica is working overtime to convince the rest of the squad that Annie should not join the group. So Jessica takes Helen Bradley out for a soda, and she has a conversation with her about who they are going to vote for. And Helen is shocked to realise that she doesn't have to actually vote for the best person. Even though Annie is a much better cheerleader, if 3 of them vote for Sandra, then Sandra will win. Sandra's best friend is Jean West. She's also got Jessica's vote. So Helen actually has the deciding vote, and this is what Jessica has figured out. So she convinces Helen to vote the way she wants her to. And Elizabeth comes home to find them all like laughing in the pool. So she kind of figures Annie is already out, even before the last tryout. So again, Elizabeth is on a date with Todd. They're in the family room at the Wilkins house watching a movie. And she's moping around and being so preoccupied. He actually thinks that she might be seeing someone else, and they have a little argument about that. Todd correctly guesses that it's Jessica is always at the core of Elizabeth's problems, and she gets mad at this because it's true. And Todd's mum comes in and tells them off for having a loud argument. She's like, keep the discussion down to a low roar, okay? Which is such an American sitcom parent thing to say, isn't it? So they have the cheerleading finals, and Sandy Bacon falls. Everyone around is like, oh, she's blown her chances. But of course Jessica knows it's not down to who's best, it's down to who gets the most votes. So after everyone's gone home after tryouts, and Ricky Capaldo kind of points out, like, I know I don't get a vote as your manager. He should get a vote, really, shouldn't he? But he doesn't. And he says, I really think you should pick Annie because she's clearly the best. Maria and Robin think Annie's amazing. Obviously Jean wants her friend Sandy. And when it comes to Helen, Helen has to admit that Annie is the best she's ever seen. And Jessica's like, what? And Helen's like, look, Sandy fell, I'm gonna have to vote for Annie, even though we agreed. I can't do it. And so this comes down to Jessica is desperate to stop Annie getting into the squad. Wait a minute, Jessica declared, her face red and trembling. We've all been tippy-toeing around the most important thing here, and you know what it is. And she says, if we let Annie on the squad, everyone will think we're easy like her. And Jessica literally says, if you have Annie on the squad, I will leave. I don't know why they don't just say, all right, then bye, because Annie sounds like an amazing cheerleader, and she's a sophomore, so she'll be there for more years than Jessica. Anyway, that's not what happens. They go, oh, Jessica, you can't leave us. So Jessica gets her way, as always. And for some reason, when Jessica gets home and is all like smug and pleased with herself, Elizabeth somehow doesn't know what this means. And she's like, oh, you're going to tell me who made the cheerleading squad? And Jessica refuses to tell her. I mean, the fact that Jessica is like, should probably tell Elizabeth, really, but she's just momentarily really stupid. So Annie gets the news that she did not make the squad, and she is devastated, as you'd imagine. And Ricky comes to find her. She's like, how did this happen? I thought I did really well. I thought everyone really liked me. They were applauding. How could they have voted against me? And Ricky starts out trying to be tactful, but then I think he just kind of throws caution to the wind, and he's like, I'm just going to tell her. So he admits that it was Jessica who convinced them to vote against her, and he says she brought up the kind of stories about you dating a lot of guys and said that if you were a cheerleader it would ruin the whole squad, which is probably taking the honesty a little bit too far, but I guess someone should tell her that her reputation is affecting her life. Anyway, after this, Annie just goes home and doesn't come back to school, like misses school, which they do a lot in these books. Like if someone's just a bit upset, they don't go to school. Like, I would not have got away with that in my school. Ricky confesses to Elizabeth that he did tell Annie what had happened, and he really regrets. He's like, this was the dumbest thing I've ever done. And he says to Elizabeth, look, please tell Jessica what this means to her. Like, see if you can talk her around. And all of these rumours are flying around that Jessica, like, called her a tramp to her face. So Jessica's like, I'm not going to say anything. So she doesn't deny it. So she allows these rumours to spread because she thinks it makes her sound bold and cool, I guess. It does sound better than her just bitching behind Annie's back, to be fair. At least if she called her a name to her face, that would be something. But just like being, oh, we don't like her, do we? Is just so, like, weak. And so Elizabeth does speak to Jessica. Like, she's like, please, you know, would you reconsider? Would you ever have her on the squad? She's like, it would mean so much to her. Jessica says, it means even more to us to keep the squad clean, Jessica said righteously. all Annie has done has been out with boys, which most of whom Jessica has dated. In fact, pretty much all of the ones that have been mentioned so far, either Jessica has dated them in the past or she wanted to date them and Annie got there first. So it's not actually about morality. It's not about like, oh, you shouldn't date so many boys. So it's all just complete hypocrisy from Jessica. But so then they get the horrible news that Annie is in hospital because she's taken an overdose and she has tried to end her life because this meant so much to her, and finding out that she wasn't going to get to be a cheerleader and people hated her enough to do this is enough to tip her over the edge. I think this is probably the most serious topic covered in a Sweet Valley High book. A lot of it is about, you know, makeup and arguments that you have with your friends or whatever. It's quite frivolous and quite light-hearted, but this is really serious and it's timeless. I mean, bullying is still something that does cause people to either attempt to end their lives or succeed in doing that. And teenagers kind of not having that perspective of like, I know it feels like the end of the world now, but it, you know, it won't in a few years, and feeling like I can't go on. Because, you know, you've got all of your hormones raging as well as anything else. There's a lot of sort of chemical stuff that happens in your body and your brain that makes things just feel so much more dramatic. You know, ending your life because of a circumstance that's going on in your life is like I've heard it put that it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. But of course poor Annie isn't thinking like that. She's just devastated and doesn't feel that her life is worth living. So it's a really, I'm glad that they did cover it because it is such a timeless topic. Because teenagers are always going to get bullied. And Annie didn't even really know that she was being bullied, but she was by Jessica. Jessica's trying to turn people against her, even behind her back. So yeah, Jessica is horrendous. Ricky is there at the hospital and he actually found her because he went round to her apartment to see her. And her mum shows up at the hospital like frantic with Johnny, her boyfriend, who I think is not going to be her boyfriend after this because he doesn't react in a way that you might expect someone to support their partner. And so Jessica really has her actions come back to haunt her now because they're literally talking about it like, oh, someone was trying to keep her off the cheerleading squad. Oh, that's awful. And she's just sitting there like absolutely shamefaced. Which she deserves because she's a bitch. And Jessica kind of tries to play it off like, oh, I didn't know how much it meant to her. And then she admits like, oh, yeah, I did. And I'm a terrible person. So she does actually see the error of her ways. But it took this to make her realise. So Jessica is pretty contrite about this. But, you know, she'd have to be. Then Jessica does sort of slightly redeem herself because she is the one who sits there and holds Annie's hand and talks to her while she's in not a coma, but unconscious. It's like the second time Jessica's had to do this for someone, isn't it? Like in book 7, Elizabeth's in a coma. It's like, it's a regular occurrence. The hospital must have a revolving door for the Wakefield twins. So Annie is listening to this voice. Jessica is promising her that she can be a cheerleader, and that's kind of what brings her around. So while Annie is kind of in the recovery phase, Jessica gets a cheerleading outfit for her and brings it into the hospital so she can try it on. And it's a happy ending. So they've decided to expand the squad to 8 whole people. So I guess at least now they can do a pyramid, can't they? Jessica is admonishing herself for, you know, how she's treated Annie. And she says, how can I be such a selfish, spoiled, impossible, vindictive? Hey, Elizabeth murmured, you're talking about my favourite sister. She should just say, yeah, you are. You need to mend your ways, young lady. And you know what? I think this is probably the last really bad thing that Jessica does, because we've already seen her bully twice now. So she did it with Robin in book 4 and nothing really happened to her. But I think this punishment essentially really does kind of scare her straight, because like it could imagine if Annie had actually died, how Jessica would have felt. Like I mean, she would have deserved all the misery. But yeah, she's actually realised that her actions do affect other people's feelings and their real lives. So yeah, I think this is like, she does general bitchy stuff and, you know, carries on being a sociopath. But I think until book 95, Prom Thriller, if you know, you know, this is probably the last really bad thing she does up until then. So that's it for book 10. We're in the double digits now. We end with a little teaser for book 11, where we get to meet Suzanne Devlin, and the book is called Too Good to Be True. So, sounds intriguing. I hope you will join me then. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Thank you for liking the video. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye. And on this channel we talk about all kinds of stuff, but we are doing sake. So, but Sweet Valley High is a big school, and they're very... I can tell this is going to piss me off. Seems so outdated now. The 80s sake. But only the best girls, only the coolest girls were allowed to join. Come on, man. Sweet Valley High, number 10. Sweet Valley High or not? Mummy busy. Mummy's busy. Baby. Come in the camera then. Come in the picture. Dylan, are you in the video? Are you in the video? Who's this? Say hi. Oh, you're so cute. But she's wearing a purple vest and I'm wearing exactly the same purple vest. I'm just showing you my boobs now.